Hello, you're listening to the show where we bring you the latest and greatest in tech and cybersecurity news. My name is Mackenzie Jackson, and this is a disclosure. We have a great show lined up for you today. We're going to be diving into the vibe coder's nightmare. Base44 had a massive authentication vulnerability that made all of their private applications basically public. We're going to be diving into this with Wout Debaenst, a security researcher and hacker who will be joining us on the show. We're also going to be continuing our journey through the world of open source supply chain attacks. Last week, we were talking about NPM. This week, we're talking about PyPI and a massive phishing campaign that's currently ongoing there. We're going to bring back onto the show malware researcher Charlie Ericson to join us. And of course, I get to sit down in the Cybersecurity bar with Khachatur Virabyan, who's one of the founders of Trag, which is a company that's revolutionizing the code quality space in the world of AI. It's a fascinating topic, and I can't wait to dive into it. Before we get into our first segment, do me a quick favor. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. You may have noticed that we're brand new, but we're trying to bring you high quality content every single week, and subscribing helps more than you know. Enough about that. Let's dive into the first segment. AI coding platforms have come onto the market with an absolute tsunami and storm. Companies like Lovable, Bolt, and Base44 all offer solutions where you can add a prompt and it will generate a fully functioning application for you. These tools operate like magic and they're cool to play with. But if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that a lot of these tools create wildly vulnerable applications. Great for prototyping, getting things done, but not good to be exposed to the internet. What a lot of people were using these tools for was to build internal applications, right? Applications where you're accessing your own data. They're not meant to be public, but they can perform tasks for you. This makes them quite sensitive because they probably have access to sensitive information, internal information, or share secrets about the inner workings of your organization. That's why it's very concerning when you hear that Base44 had a key vulnerability in its application, which allowed anyone to access other people's private applications. And you could do this by just using public information. So to dive a little bit deeper into this, I'm bringing on hacker, security researcher, and one of the co-founders of AllSeek, Wout Debaenst, to explain why this is such a big deal. There's been something very interesting that happened here where Base44 has had pretty much a massive vulnerability. And I guess what's unique about this is that the vulnerability is kind of passed on to all of the applications that Base44 has been creating. This was discovered by Wiz. Can you just explain from a hacker's perspective why this type of vulnerability is so significant?
So basically, there are a lot of people who made their applications through the Base44 platform, and it was fully hosted through there. And what the researchers basically found is that, like, as long as you have the identifier of the application, that you can get access to any application that you want. So what happened apparently is the developers of Base44, they forgot to add extra access controls to see if you send someone an invite for your application, if you also have the access rights to do those as well. So basically, as long as you had the app ID, you could just make an API call and then you could invite yourself to the application. The app IDs, they're not secret. You can find them through other means in the portal. So this way it might be that this could have led to all the applications being on there being compromised. And that's why this is such a huge deal, especially because these kind of platforms like Lovable, Base44, Bolt, V0Dev, they are now growing very rapidly. If something like this happens in 2 or 3 months, the impact would be 3 times as high because there are 3 times as many customers using those platforms.
This feels like the next generation of supply chain attacks. Traditionally a supply chain attack has been you compromise or you find a vulnerability inside a dependency. Take Log4j, that wasn't, malicious, but there was this big vulnerability, and then it turns out half the internet is vulnerable to the same thing. This feels like in 5-6 years, this will be the new supply chain attack, as in we find a big vulnerability that these AI models are introducing. And we can affect thousands of millions, potentially millions of targets at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. But it even goes further. I think all these coding platforms, they don't take security into account in their prompting. Like all these, you don't even need to have like a malicious package or like the base being compromised. If like the platform that you're using is just generating insecure code by default, then yeah, you can't be secure on your own anymore without doing like a lot of extra work. If you're just vibe coding your way out, it's asking to be vulnerable in the future.
Yeah. And I do love the vibe coding apps. They do feel like magic. But when you actually go through and try and look through the code, like when you're not writing something yourself, and I think a lot of the people that are using these won't be familiar with programming languages, it's very difficult to even figure out what's going on, let alone trying to uncover security issues within them. What would you say would be advice to anyone that's kind of using your built Bolt 44 applications at the moment? Is there any action that needs to be taken by people? If you're listening to this, you're using base 44, what action do you need to take?
Basically, like just if we look at vibe coding in general, I think the main rule of thumb is to make sure that like you at least verify the code that's coming out of it. That's step one, and that you do the checks. Okay, is this code valid or not? Like, is it secure or not? That at least you take responsibility for that. I think that's the number one thing. But like just to like already improve like the secure results that come out of it, you can also just use security earlier in the platform by using it as part of your prompting. You could say, for example, like in the regular situation, build me a login portal functionality, and it would create you the login portal, and it would store, for example, the credentials in plain text in the database. And this is not functionally works perfectly. Security wise, not that great. But like if you could get security more as part of your prompting, that's already like I think where you could prevent most of these security issues. Just saying like generate me secure login portal, or like really make it like very specific and think ahead of what might go wrong. For example, make me a secure login portal that does prevent user enumeration, brute force attacks, that stores passwords in plain text. Like all these kind of abuse scenarios that you make them as part of your like requirements, as part of your specs, as part of your prompt. And I think a lot of the issues will already be prevented this way. You want the security of your application being validated. And that's like where security tools can come in, like code scanners, or especially if you have like are handling sensitive data. I would definitely recommend you like see how strong your security actually is by actually giving it to a hacker. Do a pen test. Get someone like with the necessary skills to look at your application and see what can go wrong. With base 44, for example, the vulnerability is so simple that I can't imagine that a hacker wouldn't have found that, like if they would have done a pen test. So that's where the pen testing should definitely come in place.
It feels like with these kind of vibe coded applications, that a lot of the vulnerabilities are very simple. I know I was experimenting with Lovable and I was getting all of these errors. So then eventually I was putting the errors back in the prompt, and how it solved them was to remove all securities. So in the case of Lovable, it's a row level security. And like that's how it solved them. It's like, okay, here's the issue. The security policies are getting in the way. Let's get rid of them. Problem solved. And this feels very similar in the sense that it seems to be missing a logic behind how it approaches things.
I think it just never made with like security in mind. I think that the prompts, if like a Lovable or a base 44 or v0 dev, if they could already like make security as part of their prompting, or have like agents that are specifically built and prompted and designed to make secure login portals once it gets that task, I think a lot of these invulnerable designs would already be like off the table just at the source. But that's indeed like something that they have to do it by design. And then we can already like build further on top of that. But right now, just vibe coding your way through is tricky, let's say.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming back onto the show, and I'm sure I'll be sliding into your DMs again, trying to get you to comment on the next big breach that happens. But I just want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
Happy to be here.
If you watched last week's show, you will know about a massive phishing campaign that's going on with NPN. And that is that there was a domain called npn.com npmjs.com and not npmjs.com. And this is being used to target popular maintainers in a phishing campaign. Well, a week later, and it seems that this has given other actors, all the same actors, some inspiration. This time with PyPI. The domain pypj, and not I, has been registered, and it is sending people phishing campaigns to try and get them to log into their accounts to steal their credentials in a very similar attack. To uncover what this is and who might be behind it, I brought onto the show malware researcher Charlie Ericson. He was with us last week. I didn't mean to have him back so soon, but he is here to discuss this with us today. Charlie, thanks so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
No problem. Good to be here.
Yeah, I didn't expect to have you back so soon, but yeah, but I'm glad you're available. So last week we talked about npm. There was a malicious domain, npmjs.com, doing phishing campaigns. Something extremely similar is happening with PyPI. Can you tell us what on earth is going on?
Yes. So we saw another phishing attack happening earlier this week, like 3 days ago. 28th of July, where the packet num2 words, which has a lot of downloads, like it's a very popular package, was compromised with malware. And it turns out that it was a phishing attack, and they were deploying this thing called a scavenger stealer.
What is a scavenger stealer?
Scavenger stealer is basically the software, right, that they are deploying with the malware, which steals data and things.
Okay. I'm drawing so many parallels between this and what happened last week that I guess there's a little bit of speculation involved at this point, unless we have attribution, but it feels like it's kind of similar people, or definitely, or if not, certainly inspired by last week's attack.
Yeah. To me, it very much feels like it's the same threat actor. Right, we see the same playbook in terms of phishing. Right, they know how to target the right people because obviously that data is public. PyPI with a J at the end instead of the I. Right, PIPJ.
Yeah, a nasty one.
Yeah,
they're very difficult to spot these. Like in an email.
Yeah, I mean it's very difficult. Right, you really have to be super careful. And with the actual thing that they are then deploying, right? It's the same software going to domains that I believe also other people have attributed basically to the same threat actors, right? The command and control service. So I think it's fair to say, right? It could be a copycat, but frankly, Occam's razor would suggest it's the same people.
Yeah.
And I mean, like when this happened with NPM, right? The logical question is, when is this going to happen to PyPI? Right, second biggest ecosystem. They would be silly not to repeat the very successful attack against PyPI.
Absolutely, that's definitely the playbook that I would follow. This clearly is working really well. We're really seeing the fall of massive packages, or maybe not the fall, but the compromise of massive packages. Do we expect that we're going to see, has this been caught early? Has there been any indication of kind of compromises of people that have been using this dependency? Do we know anything about the next steps that's going on?
I think it's also important to really reflect on, at least for me, right? This really feels like an inflection point to some extent, right? We've really seen a lot of big attacks in a very short succession that I think we maybe really weren't expecting. It is really shown how easy it is to compromise such big packages. Yeah, that really is a wake-up call, I think, right? We have not faced the full kind of scale of attacks up until now, right? The capabilities that they can have. So I think, we really need to look at what can we do to protect the ecosystem better. And it's across the whole ecosystem, right? There's on the registries themselves, right? NPM, PyPI. There are things that I think they really need to think about. How do you protect the system such that a simple phishing email does not instantaneously without any warning have such ramifications in the age of autonomic agents like this.
It does. It seems scary. And I think the part that for me was the most scary was that it happened a week later. Like we were just talking about this. We were just saying, oh yeah, you know, all this awareness has gone out there. It's like, oh, got to be careful about phishing campaigns. And then immediately, same playbook, same things, and it works. And I'm not blaming the people that clicked on it. I totally get it. But yeah, you're right. This is an inflection point because clearly we can't continue on being this fragile.
There was a really interesting thing that happened specifically with num2words was that, somebody noticed methods to maintain us on Twitter, right? They took down the package and an hour later, another version popped up. The attacker still had access, right? That was then when the maintainers kind of saw like, oh yeah, there was a weird authentication token on the account. So even in the case where you think you have remediated, right, you have to be really careful that you have closed off all access points.
Yeah, okay. Wow, that is really interesting. Because it is like, it's a little bit more than just stealing credentials, because PyPI is similar to NPM, where multi-factor authentication is generally installed on all these popular accounts. So they're stealing session IDs, not just credentials, and then they're able to persist access via tokens. And how cheeky is that? Like you've been caught, you found a malicious package, and then you pop another one straight away in there.
Yep. That's a big old middle finger to you. Like, you thought you got rid of us? Like, you thought everything was honky-dory? No, think again.
Wow. Well, Charlie, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and discussing this. Hopefully, I mean, maybe Maven's going to pop next week and we'll have you back on this show.
Don't even jinx it. Come on.
Touch wood. Well, but we appreciate your time. And hopefully we won't have you back on the show quite so soon, because it definitely means something bad is going on.
Yes. Hope to see you in a long time from now.
And that segment gave me a good segue to talk about the sponsor of the show, Aikido Security. Aikido Security is your complete code security platform. Aikido brings together multiple different tools like static code analysis, dependency scanning, but also it can check things like your API endpoints and your cloud infrastructure for vulnerabilities. But Aikido have just launched a very cool open source tool called SafeChain. SafeChain wraps around package managers like NPM and blocks installations if the package contains malware inside it. This is especially important with all of the attacks going on. You never know if a package has been compromised or not. But with Aikido SafeChain, you do have added protection. You can try Aikido for free today at aikido.dev. Now it's time for my favorite part of the show, where we head down to the Cybersecurity bar and chat about security with a special guest. Today we're bringing onto the show Khachatur Virabyan, who is one of the co-founders at Trag. Trag is a company that's looking to revitalize the code quality space in the AI era. We get into some controversial topics like, will code quality even matter in a few years with AI? We called this segment Unfiltered Sake. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Sake and Cyber. I'm pretty thrilled to be here with a special guest all the way from Armenia, and that's Khachatur. Okay, but yeah, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me at the Sake Bar.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, we're going to get into a little bit about code quality. You're one of the co-founders of a really interesting company called Trag, which is using AI to assist in code quality. Before we get into that, we have some sake here to try. So we're going to go half and half this day. It's a Wednesday, so we're going to go half non-alcoholic sake, half alcoholic sake. Okay, good. Just so we're not floating by the end of it.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the non-alcoholic sake.
Mm-hmm. Let's do that.
So this one here is actually brewed in Tokyo.
Okay.
So there is sake brewing in Tokyo, but it's not one of the more famous regions.
Okay.
So around Kyoto, the Nara region is a little bit more famous, but this one is still really nice.
Nice.
And this one here isn't traditional sake.
Okay.
It's got some twist in it.
Okay.
So we'll see what you think. But cheers. Did you just shot that?
Let's go. Let's bring the
Oh, I give
bring the bottle.
I have to shot it now too. I know.
Bring the bottle. This is good.
It's good, right?
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
So this one, yeah, I didn't know non-alcoholic sake existed before I started doing this. But I'm surprised at like how good it is. So that one's kind of like a little bit gingery.
Yeah, exactly. Japanese cuisine and the drinks, they're always impressive, right?
Yeah. They're always pretty good. All right, so let's focus back to the topic.
Yeah.
So as I said, you're a co-founder of Trag.
Mhm.
Do you want to just maybe give a little bit about
Sure.
why you started Trag and what the company does?
Oh, yeah. Initially, the ideas of Trag came from our own frustration, right? We were engineers and we were spending a lot of time in reviewing other people's code. And because we were also like treated code reviews as a very sacred place. Why? Because a lot of tribal knowledge gets automated there, like not automated, like spun up there. A lot of discussions are going there, et cetera, right? But it is time consuming, and it is time consuming from a very high paid jobs, right? Senior engineers, leadership, et cetera, right? So we thought, okay, if we do have large language models, how we can try at least to automate the process. So we've built this agent which takes natural language rules written by other engineers, and it matches to the changed code, right? So it's in our language it's the diff. So it matches to the diff, and if the rules are failing, we're flagging it. If they're not failing, we're just passing it, right? So a senior engineer, when comes into the review process, they can see that out of, let's say, 100 rules, only 10 failed, and you know what to expect from the diff, right? So you know what you're doing there. So with that, we're shrinking the time from those people during the review process.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think one of the key things to take away from that is that you're not necessarily trying to replace the human or remove the human. Because I always get a little bit skeptical when I hear this, right? Because of this, like automated employees and all that. That's like the last thing I want is ChatGPT just going rogue and doing things, right? Like, and I don't want ChatGPT reviewing code either. But this is interesting. It's like assisting. It's trying to help you do it. I want to hone in on one of the things you said, and you talked about rule sets. Now, when I think about rules, and obviously I have a bit of a background in security, I really think of like fixed rule sets here, which are deterministic, pass fail.
Yeah.
You mentioned rules, but you also mentioned natural language, human language in that. Can you dive into a little bit of that?
Sure. So one of the ideas is that first, large language models are here for us to help in terms of helping us bridge the natural language into the linting rule generation part. At first, we could have just built a natural language bridge from just plain English into, let's say, AST grep rules, but it's not enough because those kind of tools are limited in their nature. They're doing only linting stuff, and linting is by far very limited into styling and formatting issues, right? So at first, we're like, okay, if you're coming into the diff, you want to, is this doing this or that? That's the mindset that you're coming into the review process. So why not connect to that actual mindset that the senior engineers are coming into the review process and just try to lower it down to the basis of how the diff was written, like how the actual feature was implemented, etc. So that's why we thought natural language interface would be the best one. But of course, engineers are very comfortable using any configurations, but natural language is just given to us, right?
Yeah. Definitely. And I feel like we're getting more and more down natural language areas. It's easier to understand. You mentioned something else in there that I want to hone in on. Now, one of the great things about having a podcast is that you get to ask dumb questions that you want to know the answer to, but you're too embarrassed to ask someone. So this is going to be one of those moments. So for the audience's benefit, maybe you want to go into a little bit about kind of the difference between code quality and linting, because you mentioned linting in the last kind of question, and I'm curious to understand, is there a difference between the two?
Okay, so linting is a part of the whole code quality system, if methodology, if we can say so, right? I think the linting was the very first workflow automations that we as engineers had, which is doing this. Let's say I wrote a program and I'm writing a small program, which checks some of the stuff that I wrote in my first program, which is very deterministic. It scans the whole code statically, which is known as static code analysis. And it reads the, let's say, Python code and checks if the variable namings are correct, if the formatting is good, etc., etc. It's a good way for a team of engineers to work in a same way, essentially, right? But linters are very limited in their nature. They cannot go and lint business logic. They can check basic security issues, but they can never go into having the source code, getting the information from the infrastructure, etc., etc. So it's not dynamic by nature, right? So they're limited.
Yeah, no, there's so much parallels in security
Mhm.
that we have in this area too, where
Mhm.
SaaS tools
Yeah.
have gone through 6 years of having a very bad name because they've been extremely noisy, right? And then you find out they're flagging on a function that's vulnerable, but the function's not really doing anything. All of these kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And now we're at a point where we can actually start going deeper into this
Mhm.
using the
Mhm.
help of AI and stuff. I feel like this is where we're heading also in the direction of
Exactly.
code quality.
Right. Yeah. That's 100% the same, because right now the importance of code quality, it's number one priority for a lot of organizations right now.
Yeah.
Because there is two options. When we embrace AI code generation, that means we do not guardrail the AI code generation. That means we create new ways to help the AI generated code reach to production. It's pretty much the same as it's roughly the same example as with the cars. When we had the cars, we do not change the cars to drive on top of mountains, etc. We build roads, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty much the same. If we do have AI code generation, which helps us a lot, we do not go and change how we guardrail or change the code generation itself. We invent new ways to help more and more AI generated code to reach to production.
I want to go into what some of the AI code generated things. This may be a battle subject. So let's get into our second sake.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into this.
Yeah.
All right. So here we have a sake. This is from the Nara region.
Okay.
This is actually my favorite sake that I've tried. I thought I'll try and do different sakes every episode, but I've decided
I just love it.
I just like this one. Yeah. So this is from Nara.
Yeah.
One of the things that Nara is famous for, the region in Japan, is it has very soft water. And you'll notice that. You'll notice that the previous one it's quite sharp flavor. This will be very soft going into it.
Okay.
Supposedly.
Yeah. Let's try it.
And you can shot it if you want, but the general recommendation is sipping.
The smell is really good. Yeah, it's so nice.
It's good.
Yeah. This is
The sake is quite dangerous because it's not crazy alcoholic.
Yeah.
But man, it catches up on you. All right. Okay, we're lubricated up now. Let's get into the controversial topic of AI code gen. One of the things I'm curious about is, right now, AI generated code, is it better in terms of a code quality perspective than humans, or is it worse? What is the general consensus here?
That's one other really good question. So I would say you can treat it as a smart, genius level smart, autistic junior engineer who does not know anything besides point in time understanding of what is going on. So it's like, you imagine you bring this engineer and then you say, implement this. They will 100% just really good, and they will just write that, right? I'm talking about the latest models, etc., right?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about one-shotting huge features, just a basic thing, right? That the model will perform really good. But the problem is the peripheral information that the models have, because you can imagine that organizations hire engineers for 10 years. They leave the knowledge from day one, from the day they're exiting the company, right? So that's it's a flow of information and not a point in time issue. And that's what the problem with the code generation right now is. They're really good at point in time generation, right? Because they do not have the context. So if we only speak about the point in time generation, they'll be pretty good, but not big features, because they need other context, right?
Yeah.
So that's the main difference on how we can treat them, right?
I like that. It's a genius level junior engineer.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an oxymoron, but I quite like it. Okay. So that's where we are right now, latest models. And we talked about this in the last episode too, is that kind of these models actually don't continue to learn. They're trained and then their knowledge is fixed from that point on. Let's say that the next evolution comes with 5 years, 10 years down the track. Is code quality still a thing? Are the models so good now that it's everything is perfect?
Yeah, that's another good question. So it's like there is an interesting paradox that I love to think about, right? So it's like in one hand we have the models that are getting better and better and better. So do we actually need to review what they've written? Or it's the opposite. If the model is that good, it can review itself. But in parallel, we try to understand, okay, if it's that good, do we actually just need to have one single approve button to see the changes and then approve it, and then it goes into the production? So that's an interesting paradox to have. I do not think we can answer that right now, but my take is I'm very bullish on the models. I 100% to see the world where the whole code is generated by AI and we just dare to monitor it.
Yeah.
The monitoring part actually starts to be the quality gating.
And I guess too, like the where I think of it too is often when AI models generating code, they're generating code sometimes with limited context. And I think like code quality, especially like linting, can differ between them. So we could end up in a position where like it's a patchwork of beautifully written code that is almost impossible to understand because it doesn't follow standards. One of the interesting things I've been thinking about, and I was actually involved in a lawsuit against OpenAI. It was unintentional.
Okay.
They quoted me and brought me in as an expert, but I don't know why. But we were talking about polymorphic malware.
Okay.
And basically malware that can rewrite itself. And the question that I kind of posed was, right now these AI models are writing Python, they're writing JavaScript. Do we get to a point where they're writing binaries? Or a language that doesn't, like, because at this point, the only reason why they're writing that is, well, I guess one, they've been trained on it, but two, humans still need to look at it and understand it. What happens when we don't?
Yeah.
like, do we get to, do you see that where it's writing direct binaries? Or
it's so interesting, because what is the last time you were checking, let's say you wrote a Python code for doing some script. What is the last time you've checked the machine code?
That like,
it's like, I do not do that. Right?
Yeah.
When I write JavaScript for a web application, or I write JavaScript for some other things, or you write Rust, or somebody writes Go, we do not look into the binary code anymore.
Oh yeah, anymore.
Yeah.
I used to.
No. Our grandparents might, right? I don't know, right? But it's like, you can imagine that then we have compilers, right? We can treat the language models as the compilers themselves, right? Why do we actually need to look into the generated Python code when we can read intermediary representation of a natural language, which makes pretty much everybody on the earth engineers?
Yeah.
Right?
No, I kind of completely agree with that, right? And at this point, it's like it's terrifying. Can you imagine just getting a binary and running it, just like hoping for the best?
Yeah.
But I guess at some point, when we've all forgotten how to write Python. I have another fighting question here. Okay, so I want to kind of get a little bit back on track with code quality, what Trag is doing. I love the concept, natively written rules for code quality and having these separate rule sets out. And I get the advantages of it, but I want to play devil's advocate and talk about the disadvantages of this. Are there risks in not having this deterministic approach? As in security, the risk is by not having static rules, something will be missed, right? And the same can apply here.
Exactly. And there's no any AI application in the world which, on top of large language models, which can pretend to be 100% deterministic. No, because the LLMs themselves, they're by design, they're non-deterministic.
Yeah.
So our job is to make it deterministic to at least 99% of the way. And if we're not sure with the 1%, we just ask a human to make sure that it's fine or not, right? And in the application world, in the LLM application world, those 1% approval rates from the humans, 2-3%, those are completely fine because you're automating alone like 90% of the job, right? So if you're not sure about something, just prompt a human saying, we are thinking like this.
Yeah.
Is it correct or not, right? So I can confidently say that we're doing determinism like in a 98-99% of the range, right? But we still have this small percentage where we're not sure if the rule matches or not. End of the day, you just prompt a human.
I was doing some research. This is a while ago, I think like 2 versions of Claude ago, where I asked the same prompt to generate the same code like 20 different times, and it came up with like
different variations,
like 10 different variations.
Correct. Yeah.
Which was really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're kind of finishing the serious part. I'm going to refill our sake here.
Yeah. Thank you.
So the game is called Would You Rather.
Okay.
And basically, it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to ask you two options. You have to pick one.
Okay.
Would you rather only vibe code, so you can't write any code yourself, you can prompt, or no AI and you have to use Notepad?
100% Notepad.
The 100% Notepad?
This is Sake speaking. No, vibe coding.
Would you rather
Mm-hmm.
deploy to production at 6 p.m. on a Friday,
Okay.
every Friday,
Okay.
or deploy regularly,
Uh-huh.
but with no staging environment?
So you will try a controversial take. I will go with not having. I'm comfortable with not having staging environment.
Oh,
YOLO is like one life to live. Let's go. Yeah. And with vibe coded application.
Vibe coded, push to production. Yeah, no stage. That's actually how most vibe coding is done. So it's not even.
That embrace the future, right?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
All your API keys are hard coded in your source code,
Okay.
or you have no firewalls on your application.
Ooh. Let's just put our bet on the humankind and think that they will not steal our API keys and just go with the first version.
Okay. All right.
No.
Well, that's all I had for you. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks
enjoy
for
our
having
time.
me.
It's been a blast.
Yeah. Thank you. Cheers.
And that's it for today. We're going to be coming at you with a very special episode next week coming from Black Hat in Las Vegas. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and I'll see you all then.